Hi, I'm Brian Lally, Union Rep for PSU-AAUP, and I'm here today to talk about bargaining timelines. Now, if you're a public employee in the state of Oregon, bargaining timelines are legally mandated by a state law that's known as PECPA, which is short for the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act. This act sets out the required timelines for bargaining between a public employer and its public employee union. Now, PECPA is enforced by what's called the ERB, the Employment Relations Board. That's the state agency that oversees the enforcement of PECPA. So if there are any potential violations of PECPA, ERB would have a judicial hearing that would decide whether a violation has taken place and whether sanctions should be imposed. There's also other services ERB provides, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So, under PECPA, a public employer and a public employee union are required to bargain for at least 150 days for their contract. So, using some hypothetical dates, let's say next year we start bargaining on June 1st. So we have to bargain for 150 days, going back and forth with management, exchanging proposals and discussing issues, trying to get a resolution. So if we go 150 days of direct bargaining, that takes us to about October 29th. Now, let's say we get to October 29th and we're still making good progress. The parties can mutually decide to continue bargaining. We don't have to end at 150 days if we don't want to. But if either party decides they're done, they've reached impasse, they're not willing to go any further, then bargaining stops. So to continue past 150 days, again, it takes mutual consent. If one party doesn't want to continue, we're done with the 150-day process. So let's say after 150 days, one of the parties says, we've reached impasse, we're not willing to go any further on this, we need to go to the next step in the process. So again, that'd be around October 29th. So about October 30th to November 14th, roughly, PECPA requires parties to be in mediation for 15 days. That doesn't mean they have to be in mediation every day for 15 days. It's simply a 15-day window for this process to take place. How mediation works is the parties would contact ERB and ask them to assign a mediator to our bargaining. The mediator would arrive, and typically the parties would be in two separate rooms, with the mediator going back and forth in kind of a shuttle diplomacy process, trying to get them both to their bottom lines, try to reach a path to an agreement. Now, 99 times out of 100, mediation is successful. A contract agreement is successfully reached in mediation. It's a very effective process for getting out of impasse, getting beyond impasse. But suppose after the 15 days, we haven't reached an agreement. And by the way, the 15 days is a minimum, just like the 150 days is a minimum, the 15 days here is a minimum as well. If the parties, after 15 days, are still making progress in mediation, they can go past that point and have a second mediation session, a third one, etc., if they think it's going to do them some good. So, but again, for purposes of our timeline here, let's say it's 15 days in mediation and we move on to the next step. So if after that point we're still at impasse, then the parties have 1 week, 7 days, to create their final offer. So the union and the management will come up with what is each of their bottom lines and exchange those. So both sides have an idea of what they're dealing with. After that 7 days, we hit what's called the cooling off period, which under this timeline would start around November 23rd and last till December 23rd. This is not just a time for parties to think long and hard about where they are in bargaining. It's also an opportunity for the parties to get together again, to communicate, to have some bargaining, to really try to reach an agreement before the final step comes, because the final step is pretty drastic. So, again, another opportunity to resolve the contract. If, after the 30 days, the contract is not resolved, then the union can go on strike, and management can implement that final offer they gave over here. So management can, at this point, say, that final offer we gave you over here, that's now your contract. And the union, again, would go on strike in response because they're not happy with that, and they'd stay on strike until they could resolve whatever issues they have with that final offer so that they come up with a contract they can live with. Now, the odds of this process going exactly as I have it written up here is pretty low. Parties often go past 150 days. Mediation often is more than 15 days. So the likelihood of us calling a strike on what would be Christmas Eve is pretty unlikely. So this is, again, simply for purposes of illustration. These are hypothetical numbers. But hopefully this gets across the idea of how the bargaining timelines work. If you have any questions about this, as always, you can contact me or other union leadership. We'd be glad to discuss it with you. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great day.